any second now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Free Zone. With me, as always, is Derek. Derek, how you doing this evening?
Pretty good, man. Got a nice little clean shave in before the show. I'm looking hireable again.
Nice. First things first. R.I.P. to Ted Turner. Ted Turner passed away today. Say what you want about the guy, and you can say a lot of things about him, probably both positive and negative, but he pioneered the 24-hour cable news cycle, among other things, but you definitely got to give him credit for that. So, that's one thing we need to recognize as his contributions to positive and negative, probably, to our society. We complain about the 24-hour news cycle probably as much as we praise it, but there's one of the guys responsible for it for sure.
Norm Macdonald had a great joke back in it. He was talking about how he didn't say Ted Turner, but he's talking about like the invention of the 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
And he talks about how like when he was a kid, the news was 30 minutes a day, and at the end of the day, the newsman said the news, and then that was the end. And he's like, it didn't take long after the 24-hour news cycle was invented to realize that there's about 30 minutes of news worth a day, and they just got to recycle it over. It's like there's about 30 minutes of stories a day, and that people are into it. So it's like, I'm good.
Yeah, that's
a dog in a well.
About right. I will not argue with that. Yeah, that's about right. And of course, one of the downsides of the 24-hour news cycle is it has caused people to go looking for news in places where it probably doesn't exist. But in addition though to CNN, we've got to talk about the superstation WTBS and what that did for early cable, and not only that, but what it did for the Atlanta Braves. WTBS made Atlanta Braves baseball's version of America's team. Yeah. It made them a nationwide draw, just like what was it, WGN in Chicago did for the Cubs, and so you can't really argue the impact of those when it comes to that either. And so Ted Turner was he was a character, and he'll be missed in a lot of ways.
I actually I know everything, not everything, but I know about Ted Turner and like what he built, like with TV and stuff. But typically, whenever his name comes up, I do think of the Braves right away. Um,
Yeah,
and he's not. It's just
absolutely.
he. You're right. Like it was. He puts him on TV, and like
Yeah.
everybody saw him. And I'll be honest too. Like I didn't know. I thought he was already passed. Like to me, Ted Turner's one of those guys that I remember him in
Well,
like the '90s, and I felt like he was elderly in the
yeah.
'90s.
So he was diagnosed in 2018 with Lewy body dementia, which is a progressive brain disease, and so he has not been, he's suffered from dementia and has not been himself for yeah, quite a while now. But so yeah, this has been an ongoing thing.
Yeah. Well, rest in peace, and yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
I'm always a big fan of I do appreciate that like I like the evolution. Like I don't really watch 24-hour news, but like
Uh-huh.
I'm somebody who like looks back on um that's one of the things. Like I don't have a ton of like friends in present day, and it's not like I'm mad at anybody, but like I just feel like
Right.
ever since like 2016, I feel like everybody that I love and care about is just they're really mad politically on whichever side of the fence they're standing on.
Hmm.
And I feel like they're all trying to convince me that America sucks and like we live in like the worst place in the world. But I just don't buy it. Like I look back on all of it very fondly, like
Right.
24-hour news cycle was awful. Okay. You didn't say that when we were all glued to the TV watching OJ run away from the police at 22 miles an hour. Like it's
Yeah.
like it's a part of like our history. It is our
Oh yeah.
it is what America is. So I'm a big fan of what Ted Turner did.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um. Also in celebrity news this week, Steven Tyler is getting ready to go to court. Actually, was in court this week. Um. Steven Tyler has been sued. The lawsuit started in 2022. He's been accused of grooming and impregnating a then 16-year-old named Julia Holcomb. Her name now is Julia Miley. Back in the 70s. And supposedly he wrote about this relationship in his 2011 memoir, although he did not mention her by name. 90% of the lawsuit got thrown out of court this week because it occurred in Massachusetts and more than 35 years ago. I'll tell you specifically what the judge said. The plaintiff's suit was filed more than 35 years after the alleged acts and more than 35 years after she turned 18. To be timely, this suit must have been filed within 7 years. So 90%, 95% of the suit was thrown out of court. But this court is in California and the judge is in California. It's being heard in California. And he did bring Mrs. Miley to California at one point. Okay, which means California, which in their Child Victims Act enacted in 2022, eliminates the statute of limitations for child sexual assault. And the age of consent has always been 18 in California, which means since he brought a 16-year-old to California in the 70s, he is very possibly guilty of something in California. And so that part of the suit was allowed to stand. I hate to speculate at somebody's motivation for filing a suit 35 years after the fact. But I'm always a little struck by it when somebody files a suit this long after the fact. And I think this California law in 2020 may well have something to do with that.
Yeah, I think because it's really it's not black or white. So like my knee jerk reaction is the same. It's like okay, it's been 35 years. This guy's famous and rich and wealthy, so this could be like a money grab and everything. But like the fact that I don't know how old he was, but the fact that she was 16,
Yeah, that's disgusting. Yeah.
I think it really like I don't know. Like I think it's messed up that not everybody can understand, but like there's just like you talk about like power struggles between human beings and stuff. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a power thing, but I think that there is definitely a strength to knowing more about how cheese is made and knowing more about the world than a 16-year-old child, basically.
Yeah.
I don't. I think there's a reason why like most like movies and music that's like super popular, they like aim towards children that age because they're very impressionable and they think anything, you know, like you can convince them that anything's cool for a minute. So
Right.
once you bring all that into it, like it's really like she could have waited 40 years. But then, you know, 2016, 2017, when the Me Too movement started, I start to think like, well, if you didn't jump in then, like, why wait till now? But if that ruling was post, you know, Me Too, like if it was in 2020 or 20 later than that, then that does kind of make sense. If she got pregnant, also, I'm assuming, unless like she lost it or something,
she claims that Tyler pressured her to have an abortion. Okay, and Casey Higley just messaged me and asked who we were talking about. He must have missed the very first. So we're talking about Steven Tyler, the lead singer for Aerosmith, who is being sued by a 16-year-old that he had a relationship with in the 70s. I mean, she was 16 in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, most of it was thrown out of court because of the statute of limitations, and it occurred in Massachusetts. But he did bring her on tour to California, and so yeah, that a part of it is allowed to stand because there is no statute of limitations for child sexual assault in California.
I don't think just me looking at like patterns and stuff, I don't think there's any chance that Steven Tyler's going to end up like in a jumpsuit, like doing time.
No, this is not a criminal case. It is a civil case. He has not been charged with a crime, although I suppose he could be. But
based on the fact that like she was obviously like 16, a kid, but so I think he should write a check to all the parties involved. But the main reason I think he should write a check is like writing about it in your book was a choice, and it was a dumb choice, you know, like I think
agree.
it really frames like how he looks at what happened back then, you know, as like he frames it as a win. And I hope it was worth every penny he's probably going to pay for that, you know, win that he's carried around for 35 years. Like, man, I scored that one time. It's like, that was a kid, bro. Like, and you did some weird stuff, you know?
Yeah. The other thing too is that, you know, when you start looking at cases like this, you realize that age of consent is not a universal thing across the United States. You know, every state has its own age of consent. There are a lot of states where that age of consent is 18, but there are a lot of states, including Kansas, where the age of consent is 16, and some even younger. So yeah, that's something else that it's honestly, it's one of those things that everybody ought to take a look at, because you ought to know the age of consent in your state. And one of the reasons why you ought to know it is because if you don't think it's right, you know, that it's something you can try to change, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. Like you ever met like a guy that was like okay with younger girls and because of like the age, like, well, the age of consent, like, first of all, anytime a guy like talks about a girl he's into and he's like, well, the age of consent in this state, I'm just like, yikes, bro, we're in danger.
Exactly. Anytime.
I'm just
I agree with you 100%.
And they always say the cherry on top for me to realize that this person is just dumb is like, no, dude, she's real mature for her age. I'm just like, oh, okay, dude. Like, you're like, did you read like How to Be a Weirdo 101? Because you're saying all the things, man. Well, anyway, hopefully Steven Tyler writes a fat check. Shouldn't have bragged about that. Pretty dumb to do that, and pretty dumb to do that. He says Sarah Paulson Met Gala. I actually had no idea what you were talking about on that one.
Okay, so Sarah Paulson went to the Met Gala this weekend, and she's catching some flack, and I think rightfully so, for her costume, her getup. She wore a very distressed gown, which was supposedly aimed at the 1%, and she wore a mask, a dollar bill mask. And of course, a lot of people are saying, okay, it's probably a good message and it's probably something we need to talk about, but you're at a place where you paid $100,000 for the ticket and you are worth millions. Maybe this is not the right time for somebody to be trying to deliver this message, and maybe you're not the right person to be trying to deliver it. So I think she's been accused of being a little bit hypocritical by a lot of people. I had seen pictures of the person with the dollar bill looks like a blindfold across their face, and I'd never given it much of a second thought until I saw a TikTok video where somebody was talking about, hey, if you're worth millions and you paid $100,000 for your, you are part of the 1%. I don't know that. I understand the sentiment, but yeah, it may have been kind of a hollow gesture. It always seems ironic that the people that make these statements sometimes, well, they're, as we've talked about here before, they're people that can make these statements because they can afford to. And, I don't know, that sounds terrible too, but, yeah, I think I understand why people sometimes see it as a little bit hypocritical.
I was gonna say, like, it's so obvious it jumps out, but like talking shit about the 1% at the Met Gala is like as dumb as like starting a campaign to kill technology on Facebook. It's like, bro, you're on technology. Like,
exactly.
My question is this: like, maybe you don't know the answer, but when like AOC went to some event or something, and she wrote
right.
like something on tax the rich, so whatever.
Tax the rich. I believe that was also a Met Gala event.
What is who is the audience? Like, I get why people who are very rich, very highly connected, like very like, well, I'll just say it, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. They're very not American in the sense that the majority of Americans have no idea what that's like. They just go to work and shut up. But like, they are the one. But whenever they do these gestures and they do them in front of at big places, in front of cameras, where they know that two idiots like you and me are going to talk about, who is their audience? Like, and I don't know who, like, because you and I are both poor people, and I don't think
that's the problem.
Is a slow clap when we read about it.
That's the problem, I think, is too many times they're trying to make a political statement. And it's easy to say, oh, this is bad, without necessarily proposing any sort of a serious solution. And so I think a lot of times, people are making a political statement. With AOC, she was talking about doing something specific, tax the rich. I get that. Yeah. Okay. But my guess is she'd probably never really looked into the actual mechanics of taxing the rich. Taxing the rich is not as easy as everybody thinks it is. And you're going to have to completely rewrite the tax code if you really want to tax the rich. And there's a lot of people, that'll be affected by that, not just the rich, but yeah, I mean, it's doable, but it's not nearly as easy as some people think it is. But that's okay. That's neither here nor there, I think sometimes we see things like this with Sarah Paulson and we think these people are a little out of touch. And you know what? I get it. At the same time, I also understand the message she's trying to make. And it's a message that, even for somebody like me that has been a fiscal conservative all of my life, even for somebody like me, it's beginning to, I mean, yeah, the outrageous amounts of money and the amassing of wealth by certain individuals is Okay, let me put it to you like this. 20 years ago, let's say 25 years ago, I believe there was one billionaire on the face of this planet, maybe two. There was a point where the Sultan of Brunei and Ross Perot were the only billionaires on the planet. Okay? Now I couldn't even tell you how many billionaires there are. There was a time when the richest guy on the planet was worth less than 2 billion. And it hasn't been that long ago. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's in recent memory. And now there are people that are worth hundreds of billions. And so that amassing of wealth in the hands of so few is not good for an economy. It's not good for a society. It's not good for it's not good for anybody, to be honest with you. And what happens then is what will eventually begin to happen, and we're already seeing it happen, is as money becomes concentrated in the hands of the ultra wealthy, and you can go back through history and look at this, not with the amounts we're talking about, but as a society begins to concentrate the wealth in the hands of a few, what happens is the middle class gets choked out. And eventually there is no middle class. You end up with two classes, the ultra wealthy and the ultra poor, and that's it, literally nothing in between. And when you do that, that is the death of a society. And so so I understand the point that she's trying to make. I think maybe and again, I'm not criticizing her, but I think probably maybe she could have made it at a different place or in a different way, and it might have been more meaningful. But I'm not going to criticize her for what she did. And to me, that's just part of today's internet culture. There is nothing you're going to do that somebody isn't going to criticize you for doing it. That's just part of today's internet culture. There will be a troll out there, no matter what you do or say, that will be perfectly willing to attack you and somehow, try to make you look like a bad person for doing it.
I think, though, you're right, but I think that, so what? Who cares? And that's just the way. Anytime I write music or write like an opinion about something and I put it out into the world, usually when I put it out, I feel great about it. I feel, proud of who I am. I think I'm right. But within 2 or 3 hours, I get very nervous that maybe I just did a dumb thing. And the dumb thing was, anytime you make a statement or anytime you call a bunch of people to come hear you out, you run that risk of, did I just waste everybody's goddamn time? Did what I said, was it needed? Did it have any value? Did it add to the evolution of us? Or was it just me wanting to hear my voice and seem like, so to me, if you're going to write a message like that on the back of your dress, and maybe she doesn't care if people are making fun of her. I think
I'm sure she probably doesn't.
You just have to accept the fact that half the country is going to call you dumb within an hour. They're going to be the dumbest person alive, and you have to let it roll off your back, because
I think if you're in politics, you've got to accept that anyway.
Yeah, because again, at the end of the day, anybody can make any kind of statement, but the first and most important question is, hey, who asked you? Nobody cares about your opinion, big dog.
When you talk about that, I'm kind of reminded of a quote from Lou Holtz, and he was talking about being a football coach, right? The numbers are probably a little different for politicians, but the sentiment is the same, and that is, Lou Holtz said, 20% of the people in the stands are going to think you're an idiot no matter what you do. 20% of the people in the stands are going to think you're a genius no matter what you do. You're fighting for that 60% in the middle. Politics is like that. there's a certain percentage, it's probably closer to 45% of the people are going to think you're a genius no matter what because of the letter that comes after your name. 45% of the people are going to think you're an idiot because of the letter that comes after your name. You're fighting for that 10% in the middle. And on the national level, it's probably less than 10%, being realistic. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, I don't think that she was probably overly concerned about people criticizing her. AOC, we're talking about in this case. And if, as a politician, you are concerned about getting criticism, you're probably in the wrong profession. You probably need to give it up and go for something else.
I was trying to, me and Race were having a conversation this morning when I was taking him. He goes to school early on Wednesdays because he has a job. He works for like the bank has like a program. But anyway, he was telling me about an assignment he has, and he felt like it was just like what was being asked of him was kind of lopsided. And he explained it to me, and it was kind of, I felt like, essentially the quick, like long story short, like they're asking for him to write like an opinion, but they're giving him like 5 articles to pull all of his information from. He can't pull it from anywhere else. And he's 11, and he told me, Dad, his words, Dad, these articles they gave me are more just like an opinion rather than any information. I was like, that's modern media. So I was trying to explain, and he was like, well, should I complain about having to do this? So I told him for like 5 minutes on the way there, I was like, I'm proud of you for wanting to say, hey, respectfully, this is a loaded question that you're asking me, and I'll do it. I was like, but you could just do what they're asking you and just move on with your life. And I was trying to explain to him like what the saying, dying on the hill, like I think in life it's really important, especially the older you get, and that's like, I don't know, if you turn on the news or just go out in society, you can find 100 things that are going to infuriate you, but you have to ask yourself right then, is this a hill that I'm actually willing to die on? And if it's not, your best bet is just to walk, just go away. Like there'll be another problem, So somebody was asking me, when I made that post, somebody was asking me about these new, the satellite things that are tracking where drivers are going.
Flock cameras.
Yeah. So somebody's like, what do you think about that? And I was like, obviously, like 1984, it sucks that we're being spied on. I was like, but any car that was made in like 2027 is going to have features in it that can tell if you're drunk by looking at your eyes. Your car, after 2027, most cars probably won't start if you're intoxicated. Like they have the technology. They're not going to risk it. They're not going to let somebody roll the dice and see if like technology can see if you're texting and it'll report to your engine. Like it's happening. It's already happening. So satellites are just, it's already happening. So again, like I'm not going to get really mad about it because I'm not going to change it. So that's a hill I'm not willing to die on. So in fact, the government can install a 360 camera on my dashboard if they want. And like I'm at this point in my life, go for it.
Now, let's talk about what flock cameras actually are. I posted them. They started putting them up in Morton County here a couple of years ago. And I posted them because I didn't know what they were, right? So you've been to Richfield several times recently. Those 3 cameras on the telephone pole at the south end of Richfield at the intersection there. Have you noticed those? Those are flock cameras.
I think you pointed them out to me, but I didn't know what you were talking about.
Yeah, there are more of them at the top of the hill north of the river where the CIG road takes off to the west. There's a couple of them there, right? And so they put these up all over Morton County here a couple of years ago. So what the flock cameras are is they are tag readers. And not only do they read the tags of every vehicle that drives by, but they record that. Okay? So literally your movements are being tracked by law enforcement all over Morton County. Okay? Your tags are being read and your vehicle's position and time and all that is being recorded all over Morton County. And that's what gets people a little weirded out, right? Now, the way that they are extremely helpful is I can remember a guy disappearing. It was one of those, what do they call them, silver alerts,
Yeah. So
an elderly guy with dementia disappeared in his pickup truck down in the Texas Panhandle. And because of the flock cameras, they were able to track him and eventually find him in eastern New Mexico, but so they serve a purpose. But I also understand, being kind of a paranoid kind of uh, definitely a privacy kind of guy, right to privacy guy. I understand why people get irritated with the or weirded out or even angry at the fact that you are literally being tracked by those cameras everywhere you go. At the same time, I also know that you're being tracked by your cell phone everywhere you go. You're being tracked by the GPS in your car everywhere you go. I mean, it does. Those flock cameras aren't doing anything that isn't already being done by, other devices that you carry with you all the time.
yeah, I think the reason, and I'm just pulling this out of my ass. I think the reason you see a lot of them right where we're talking about in that Richfield area is because that's a popular entry point to Colorado, which is a state where any American that has an ID can buy marijuana.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
assuming and that's not the only thing, but I'm assuming that they have anytime anybody's ever, I'm going to shoot over to Colorado, nobody will ever know. They know. And then they probably can get into databases and see what you bought because you have to show your ID and check. They know what you're doing.
And something else too that I'll throw out there, and that is, I haven't seen them around Elkhart or Rolla. Okay. I do see them. Like I said, I know they're north of the river. I know they're there at Richfield. They're not any north of Richfield on that highway. And I know there are some on east of there, like toward Riverbend feeders and that way. So not only are they located, like you said, in areas where people are coming in from Colorado and stuff like that, but they're also located in areas, because all the population of Morton County is down on the southern edge of the county. That's where the police presence is. They're also located in areas that don't have much police presence. Let's face it, you don't see the county sheriffs up at Richfield all that often. You don't see them. In my 3 years of driving back and forth to Johnson, I've never seen a county sheriff north of Richfield. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure they do get up there occasionally, but I've never seen a county sheriff north of Richfield. And I've only a couple times seen them in Richfield or around Richfield. And so, yeah, I think that may have something to do with it too. Now, Bandit's telling us that there are 2 of them in Elkhart. I don't know where they are, but yeah, so that doesn't surprise me. I just wasn't aware of it.
I'm not stoked for it. I wouldn't vote yes for it. Like, I'm not cool with being surveilled. But the older I get, I think anybody who's beyond just that's weird, that's lame, that's odd. Anybody who's upset, I have to question what are you doing that you're so worried about them?
Well, and I'm glad. Here's why I think people get upset, because I think people, number one, I think people don't think about the fact that they're already being tracked by everything. Yeah. But number two, I also think that, and this, you've lived out here all your life. There is a strong strain of I don't trust the government out here, and that's undeniable, and that's a lot of it. A lot of the reason why people get irritated with the flock cameras and stuff like that, they don't trust the government. They don't want the government recording their whereabouts. It's nobody's business but mine that I was driving down that highway between, Johnson and Richfield at 7:30 p.m. last night,
I'm okay with it, man. I go to Richfield. They catch me on the flock camera, and if they're subscribed to my TikTok, they'll see everything I did while I was there. They'll be like, "This dude filmed the whole time he was hanging out there." Bandit says across from the laundromat and the highway, one by the Shannon's liquor store, and one by the bypass towards Rolla.
There you go. Well, that makes sense. I figured surely they'd have to have them down in this part of the county too, but I had not noticed them. Of course, you know, three of them on one telephone pole right there at Richfield kind of stands out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, we have show listener extraordinaire, been here for a long time. Anthony Hanna wants to
Yeah.
know thoughts on Waymo cars.
Well, Anthony, I don't know what a Waymo car is. So,
So I used to work next to, when I was in the bug industry, there was I only went to the shop once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks for meetings. And they hated that because I would just go to my stops. But like I would go there on Thursdays and I would park my thing, and then they would do their thing, and then there was a garage that would open, and then all these cars would start coming out, and they were like taxis. Not a single driver in any of them. All of them were just self-driving. There's just self-driving taxi corporation. What are your thoughts on those?
Listen, hey, you know what? I am not a fan of self-driving cars, and here's what scares me even more. I read a story recently and watched some videos on, and I forget now what interstate it is, but I believe it's in Wyoming, a stretch of interstate in Wyoming that's, you know, several hundred miles long, that they have been allowing autonomous semis to drive on that stretch of interstate. No one in the cab. It is a purely self-driving semi truck. Okay. That scares me even more because of the potential for damage if it were to run away. Now, that being said, I know that the biggest cause of traffic accidents is driver error. Okay. And I know that so far, at least, and we would hope for the foreseeable future, that self-driving vehicles do not have the same rate of driver error, you know, have a far lower rate of driver error than do vehicles being driven by human beings. And yet somehow still the thought that there isn't a human being in that truck that could take control of it were it to run away bothers me, you know. Maybe it shouldn't, but it does.
Jonathan says they have self-driving semis. Budweiser has some running.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Oh, I-25 around Fort Collins. I didn't know that.
He also says
I read made it sound like it was only in this stretch of interstate in Wyoming where they were being used.
Says we were being tracked with phones, car cameras, our privacy is a thing of the past. With all that's why they need data centers, because they just have to mark down where Norm's been all day. That's just going to be like one aisle, like all the places that Norm drove. Yeah.
If they put that data center up at Garden City, that's all it's doing. It's just tracking me, tracking my fat ass all over.
They could print it, and then they'll go to your wife and be like, "We'll give it to you for $100." She's like, "I'll give you $100 if you take it. I don't care where he goes." Can you get him to go again?
It's tracking where I go and what I eat. That's what it's tracking.
She's like, "That's funny. You guys wasted all that money. I just look at his receipts and see what fast food joints he had. I can tell you what towns he's been in, how long he was there." Real quick, I saw an ad. I just read I saw a thing. It was just a headline, so I don't know how true it is, but they're saying it's time for New Orleans to move. It's just not a viable.
Yeah. Okay. So I had not heard this, so I had to look this up. And by the way, the article came from The Guardian, which is of course a British newspaper, but apparently somebody, and they did not do a very good job of telling us who, some group has done a study on how rapidly New Orleans is sinking in comparison to sea level, because a couple of things are going on. Number one, New Orleans is sinking, and number two, sea level is rising. But basically, the conclusion of this study is that they need to start relocating New Orleans right now. And if they don't get it relocated, it could be catastrophic to the city of New Orleans and even Baton Rouge. Okay, I'm just gonna read you a couple of the conclusions here. The process of relocating people from New Orleans should start immediately, as the city has reached a point of no return that will see it surrounded by the ocean within decades due to the climate crisis, a stark new study has concluded. Now, some of you may not know New Orleans is below sea level, okay? The only thing that keeps New Orleans from flooding is a whole bunch of pumping stations that pump the water out and a system of levees to keep the water from getting in. Okay. And that's why Katrina was such a disaster there, because Katrina overwhelmed that whole system that keeps New Orleans from becoming flooded. New Orleans really didn't even get hit by the full first force of the hurricane by any means. As a matter of fact, ground zero for that hurricane was actually Gulfport, Mississippi. Okay, New Orleans just got kind of a glancing blow, but the storm surge was what did the damage in New Orleans, as it overwhelmed those pumping stations and levees and completely flooded the city. And so, there's also a reason why, if you've ever seen pictures of cemeteries in New Orleans, why the cemeteries are all above ground, right? Yeah. You have above ground mausoleums and all that kind of thing. And again, that's because New Orleans is below sea level. Anything you put in the ground there's just going to fill with water. And so, basically what they're saying is that southern Louisiana is facing up to a 7-meter level of sea rise, which that, if it happens, according to the study, will result in the loss of 3/4 of its remaining coastal wetlands and cause the shoreline to migrate as much as 62 miles inland, thereby stranding New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So, by the way, studies like this always kind of tend to look at worst case scenario. But I mean, I think we saw with Katrina that New Orleans has a problem. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not going to pretend that I do, but I think we saw with Katrina that New Orleans has a problem. They really do.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've never been to Mardi Gras, but I know, like, years ago, growing up and stuff, I know that it was a pretty beloved place. I think there's a lot of just great stories that came out of that area. I think it was a great, like, existence, but I think that because I think, like, it's really weird to think of a city moving. Like, everybody's going to move. Right. We're shutting the city. Now you can go to Richfield, bring up an earlier topic, and there's 19 people there, and you can be like, oh wow, an entire civilization left. But, like, it is weird to think about that. But I think, like, it just by, like, what I've seen, like, I think it's probably best to just shut that down and let it be a good memory. I think I was just reading here. It says that, like, the crime has improved over the last couple of years because of stricter policing. But, like, I had some friends that moved there because of Hurricane Katrina. Friend Jeff, I won't say his last name, Elkhart kid, but right. he was just became an electrician. Katrina happened, and they found out there's a lot of work in New Orleans. So he lived there and did work until about 4 or 5 years ago. He moved like an hour out. He still works there, but he moved like an hour outside because he just said the crime was getting. He got carjacked, and he was like, the crime is getting wild. But again, like, I apparently, like, it's gotten a little better. But I think that just based on, like, I don't know. It's like it's like I feel like New Orleans is in a perfect time. If they were a rock band, they can break up and live a legacy, or they can hang on and put out another crappy record or two, and people will be like, New Orleans, that blows, like, go out on a high note. Like, but I think it's probably time to move on. If you have that many nerds with clipboards being like, guys, this is dangerous, it's like, all right, let's get out of here.
By the way, I just want to throw this out. If you want to go back and look at the history of a lot of these little towns in Kansas, you would be surprised how many towns out here in western Kansas were moved, where literally the whole town was just moved. Ulysses is one of the best examples I can think of. They moved Ulysses 3 miles away from its original site, but several towns out in this area have been moved, generally for either legal or financial reasons, or because the railroad ran a few miles away from where they thought it was going to run.
Yeah.
you know. Now we're talking about little towns there. We're not talking about cities. With little towns, it's possible. Yeah. To me, the idea that you moved the city of New Orleans is ridiculous. I realize they're going to have to come up with some sort of a solution for New Orleans.
So,
My guess is, it may be some great feat of engineering, but we'll see.
who knows? Well,
I
we got about
suppose it
15
is
minutes left.
possible for an American city to die. We'll see.
We got about 15 minutes left. The last 10 minutes, we're going to talk about music. But we got about 5 minutes here to discuss it. A friend of the show, he used to help us come up with topics on the show, Rowdy Radloff from the Roudcast, reached out to me for the first time in a long time to let me know that there is a hantavirus outbreak and that all hell has broken loose.
Yeah. Okay, so there was a hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship. And this is a cruise ship that basically cruises between Argentina and South Africa. I remember when I first saw the headline, I was struck because hantavirus is something that I always associate with this part of the world, with like from Southwest Kansas to the South and West, right? I especially associate it with the desert Southwest of this country, right? Like I said, anywhere from about here to the South and West. The first known outbreak of it, if I remember right, because I was in summer school with a bunch of people from Arizona, and several of them were indigenous people from Arizona. The first outbreak of it, and the reason why it's called the hantavirus, is that it was named for a group of indigenous people in Arizona whose tribal elders experienced the first, identified outbreak of the virus. And it was then that they realized what the virus was and documented it and what was causing it and all of that. And what was causing it is mouse feces and mouse droppings becoming aerosolized, in other words, getting up into the air where people can breathe them in, and then in the lungs, they attack the lungs and cause bleeding in the lungs and that kind of thing. And so I always associated it with the desert Southwest of the U.S., and so I was a little shocked to see an outbreak of it on a cruise ship. Well, as I read, I found out that there are different strains of hantavirus all over the world in different locations with different vectors being the carriers of the virus, right? Almost always rodents, but different, out here it's deer mice that carry it, right? So other places it's other types of mice that carry it. But what I did not know, in addition to that, is I did not know that they now believe human to human transmission is possible. And they believe that that is part of what has happened on this cruise ship. I read an article from about 4 or 5 hours ago that they now have identified the source of the hantavirus. In this case, a Dutch couple that had been bird watching somewhere where there are a lot of native rodents, and they were the first two to come down with the virus. And they believe that they contracted it from rodent droppings, but that the other people on the cruise ship contracted it from human to human contact. And so that's the theory that they're operating under right now, at least.
So I have a little bit of a history with the hantavirus. I have thought I've had it a few times. It started when I was a kid. Long story short, I went and worked for my grandpa. And we cleaned out a tack room in Richfield, and there was just mounds of mouse shit everywhere. And I thought it was funny. We were just having fun with it. And I get home and I made $40. I was very stoked. And I was a little kid. And my dad was like, "What'd you do today?" And I was like, "I made $40." He's like, "How?" I was like, "Cleaned out Grandpa's tack room." He's like, "Oh, what was that like?" And I was like, "Mouse poop everywhere, bro." And he goes, "Oh, I hope you don't get hantavirus." Like, and he regrets that ever
Yeah.
since he ruined me. I ended up in the hospital that night hyperventilating. I didn't know what it was, but I've known about hantavirus for a long time. Elkhart had several
Right.
cases for a small town.
Had several hantavirus deaths in and around Elkhart,
and we don't
the
have
Elkhart,
enough of a
Richfield,
population.
Rolla area. Yeah.
We don't have enough of a population for that to make you feel, because like hantavirus typically kills about 20 Americans a year. It's not, it doesn't happen often. So anyway, in 2017, I thought I had caught it again because I kicked up some dust by some mouse shit and I freaked out. So anyway, I knew that the incubation period is typically 8 weeks. Like that's like
Right.
what is said on all the news outlets right now that are running the stories. Like hantavirus incubation period is 8 weeks. So for those of you that don't know what to well, I'll let Norm say, but like an incubation period of 8 weeks is a very long time to not know if you're going to get sick or not. Now, Norm, real quick, explain to the audience what an incubation period is.
Okay, so an incubation period is the period from the time you are exposed to the disease to the time that you actually
show symptoms.
Contract the disease or start to show symptoms of the disease. Yeah. And 8 weeks is a long time.
Like the flu's like 2 or 3 days. Like most diseases are very
most of them are 24 to 72 hours. Yes. That was one of the problems with AIDS, at first too, was that, the incubation period there could sometimes be in excess of a year, and so, so there are some different things there. Anthony asks, is scurvy different? And yeah, Anthony, scurvy is caused by a vitamin C deficiency. Although it does leave some similar marks on a person's face, but yeah, scurvy is a different issue. It's caused by a vitamin C deficiency. And yeah, Jonathan's telling us that they had some death cases there. Yeah.
So when I thought I had it in 2017, I started calling the CDC, and you can call the CDC and you can ask for the hantavirus, unless Trump shut them down. You could ask for the hantavirus department. And there was a room with like 5 or 6 scientists that the government was paying to study hantavirus in 2017.
You mean scientists?
And they got to know Derek Relaford on a personal level. All of them knew who I was. One of them, their exact verbatim quote, I swear to God this happened, a CDC scientist said to me on the phone, "Derek, this weekend I was driving with my wife and I was thinking about you, and I think that you're going to be okay, buddy." A CDC scientist was telling me, "I was thinking about you this weekend while I was driving around with my wife, and I just think you're going to be okay. I don't think you have hantavirus." So a little crazy, but I called, and it was like 7.5 weeks, and I was getting ready to feel better, because it's like not being able to breathe for 8 weeks. You don't know if you're sick or not. You feel fine, but you might get sick. So I call the CDC. I get this lady. I forget her name. I wouldn't dox her anyway. And I said, "Hey, it's Derek. How you doing?" I was like, "Hey, it's 7.5 weeks. I just want to call and say, like, I really appreciate all of you for everything you've done. I know I'm a crazy person, but in like 4 days, it'll be 8 weeks. I think I'm fine. I'm out of it." And then she told me that, but this is the point, a long story, but this is the point I want to say. And this is something that the CDC told me, a scientist that specializes in the hantavirus told me this in 2017. And it differs from what you see. 8 weeks is the number you're going to see on everything. She told me, "I don't want to freak you out or anything, but in the Yosemite outbreak, there were several people that did not show symptoms until 12 to 13 weeks after they were exposed." So hantavirus can actually be a 12. That's a crazy. Now, here's the other thing. Whenever COVID happened, a lot of people freaked out. Like, "Derek, are you okay?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm scared of hantavirus." But I always told people, if hantavirus could be permissible, if it could go person to person, we're all screwed, because COVID had like on a bad day 3 to 4% death rate. Hantavirus is like 40% death rate, depending on the strain. If this is the same strain that is like the one that's around Southwest Kansas. So if you have a virus that has a 40% kill rate or a 40% survival rate, and then it also is person to person, you are looking at literally the next Black Plague. It is going to wipe out society. COVID only took out like people who were, it didn't take everybody out. Hantavirus, if the actual hantavirus that went through Elkhart and got those people was person to person, and it went through the world, I think we would lose.
You're saying the mortality rate is way higher. Yes, I get it. Yeah.
So them saying on the TV, I heard them say it on the news this morning or last night, that uh, uh, this form of hantavirus looks like to be transmitted person to person. That scares the shit out of me because that's never been said about hantavirus ever. And here's
Right.
another thing: about a year ago, there was like 100 vials of hantavirus stolen from some lab, like some kind of WHO lab or something. I don't know. Like this is all the person to person part that's just being slipped into news stories. Now I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Hantavirus enthusiasts for the last 26 years. How come I've never heard of any type of hantavirus ever being person to person? This is new. That's kind of scary.
Yeah. By the way, all those hantavirus vials, somebody just took those to make Jello shots.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know, man. I think that hantavirus is
I get why you're scared of it. I really do. And I remember, it certainly changed some people's behavior when it came to cleaning out sheds and things like that out here. I mean, a lot of people got in the habit of wearing an N95 mask when you were sweeping out sheds and doing stuff like that.
See, my wife she's willing to die on this hill. She's like, my husband did call the CDC every day for 9 weeks.
Yeah. I believe it.
Well, we thoughts and prayers to anybody out there who is potentially dealing with hantavirus right now. That's scary. Norm, we got about 5, 6. We can go. I think Ricky's not feeling well, so we can kind of go for a few minutes here. I want you to explain to the audience what the blue dot fever
is. Okay, so several prominent artists have canceled tours recently. Probably the biggest names being Post Malone and the Pussycat Dolls, Meghan Trainor. But the cause that has been mentioned by a lot of people is what they call blue dot fever. So what is blue dot fever? Well, if you're buying tickets from Ticketmaster, they show you the layout of the venue and where seats are available, and seats that are available, so unsold seats, appear as blue dots. So in other words, these artists are believed to be canceling tours because ticket sales are way down because they've got way too many unsold tickets. And, to me, the most obvious answer to the question of why can't these people sell out these tours is the cost of tickets themselves. The cost of tickets going to a concert has gotten outrageous. So it does not surprise me a bit that people are having trouble selling out, tours like this. Basically, I think a lot of them think that they ought to be able to go out and sell out and charge $300 a ticket because Taylor Swift could do it. But everybody ain't Taylor Swift, okay? And a lot of them are finding that out now, I think, And so poor ticket sales are causing the cancellation of a lot of tours. And, the term they're using right now is blue dot fever. Seems like there were more than those that I mentioned, but yeah, there are,
Well, I don't know, man. I think you can look at a lot of artists canceling tours as, I think most people look at it as like, man, they suck. But I think honestly, like, one of the best bits of information I've ever heard in my life was basically like, you'd be surprised what you can learn if you just shut your mouth. So I do that a lot. I shut up a lot. I just listen a lot. And it kind of, I've heard a lot of people in the last 6 months, like not directly to me, but just like talking to somebody else, just mention that like they're, I got like $20 to mess with every week after everything's paid for, I think a lot of people are broke right now. And
yeah, absolutely.
No idea why, but I'm just saying, like, I think going to see Post Malone would be really fun for, like, even if you don't like him, I think it would be better than sitting at home. But like, who's got
the price of gas is going to be an even bigger bite for people too,
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to take a huger bite because not only are you paying more for gas, but you're paying more for everything that gets shipped because of gas. you know? So here, let me give you an idea of how much prices have risen. So in 2020, the average ticket price was $82.15. Last year in 2025, the average ticket price was $119.65. And so far in 2026, the average ticket price is $144. Okay. That is a ridiculous amount of inflation in ticket prices in just 5 or 6 years, and really even just from last year at 119.65 to this year 144. And I'll guarantee you there is not a single act on tour, not a single one. And I am a music lover, and you guys know that I am a music lover. There is not a single act on tour that I would pay $144 to go see. Not a damn one.
The funniest thing I ever heard. This is back in 2007 when people would pay to go see concerts. I was hanging out with this dude who was not a great guy, but he was there by proxy. He just was there, and he was just talking a mile a minute. And he was talking about how like apparently Led Zeppelin was. This was 2007. Was toying with the surviving members back then were toying with the idea of doing a tour with John Bonham's son.
Right.
And he's like, if that happens, I don't care if they're chopping nuts at the door. I'm going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I was like, back then, I was like, there's probably a couple concerts that I would be like, I don't care if they're chopping nuts at the door. I'm going to see this show.
And you know what? Yeah, for a long time, those were the only people that were selling out tours too, were the geriatric rockers. Okay. Listen, I loved the Rolling Stones. I loved Led Zeppelin. I don't want to go watch a bunch of 85-year-olds strap on guitars and try to play.
And it's not just 85. Like it could be 35 sometimes. Like there's a band that I think I had you listen to their album Mudvayne when I was a kid.
Right.
And their first album was just they took so long to write. It was just so brutal, and it's fun to listen to even now. But I remember seeing them maybe 8 or 9 years after they had and the guy's voice is just blown out, and they're all fat and drunk, and I'm just like, bro, like it's kind of like New Orleans, like just move, like stop wearing the makeup, like move on, like you're killing a legacy here. I don't want to see a band play their hits 10 years after their prime. Anthony says FIFA tickets are outrageous.
Yeah,
according to Google, 10,000 to 2.3 million.
That is FIFA? Outrageous. Yeah, you would have to pay me 10,000 to 2.3 million to go watch a soccer match.
Bandit says just work on old cars all your life and you're immune to Hanavirus.
Yeah.
I always tell people.
By the way, as I always like to point out, you can eat all the rat turds you want, just don't breathe them in.
I always say the first step to surviving Hanavirus is having a healthy fear of Hanavirus. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just if you ever see mouse turds, just spray them with some Clorox. Fat and drunk is one of my life goals. I am trying best to eat. Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, like
what's the line from Animal House? That the dean yells at one of the guys, "Fat, drunk, and stupid's no way to go through life, son."
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's just a sign of the times, but like maybe it'll be good for because maybe it'll be good for like local music, like maybe not like just like maybe. smaller because music's not going anywhere because
maybe it'll be good for smaller venues. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
some of these people will realize they can't sell out arenas, but they can sell out the Whiskey or the Troubadour or the Cotillion in Wichita or something like that.
Yeah, but I give Post Malone and all these people, like they can't take a pay cut and all that stuff, and like they have to wait until it makes financial fiscal sense to tour. But I know a bunch of bands that'll actually pay whatever you ask them if they can just have 30 minutes of stage time with a few people out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think music's going anywhere, but maybe music kind of got too big, like maybe like
while we're on that subject.
Well, I think every artist being like this, like I'm like Taylor Swift, like whatever. People like her, people hate her. She's an entertainer, and I've never been to her shows. I probably wouldn't go to her shows, but I bet if you go to her show, and if you wear earplugs or whatever, you would be entertained by all of the things going on. Like it's a whole production, and it works for Taylor Swift. But I don't think every concert should strive to be a Taylor Swift. It's like, hey guys, Taylor has something all of you don't have, which is a jet and like money. Like, you don't need any of this. Just go out here and play your. Maybe it'll be like more of a grounding of like getting back to where it's just about. And again, people like Taylor Swift aren't going to have any issues selling tickets. This isn't their problem. So I think you're right. Maybe it will. And if they go to these smaller venues, you might see it where it becomes flirting with the idea of being more affordable to go see a band you like.
Yeah. That's the thing is, I wish, some affordability would come back into it. And, it's going to have to. If you can't sell tickets, you're going to have to start selling them for less,
Yeah.
But why would I throw free market economic principles into something like this? Because let's face it, half the time, the problem with Ticketmaster and a lot of those is that half the time, probably more than half the time, the majority of the tickets are scooped up in the first few hours by people that are going to resell them for a profit, by scalpers,
Yeah.
And that's the other problem that Ticketmaster has. And that's the other reason why people are having trouble selling stuff out. Well, you know what? If the scalpers are losing their ass on this stuff, great. I hope they do.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to give you next week's music topic now so you can think it over. I want you to discuss. So I think a lot of people think of, I don't know, I think they'll think of like a famous singer and they'll be like, oh, I love his lyrics and his songs. And I'm just like, that guy probably didn't write the lyrics. He probably had nothing to do with the music. He's probably, he picks that. So like, but again, that's not even a bad thing. But next week, I want you to talk about like that when it comes to like music, the differences between your songwriters, your engineers, your performers, and then your person, whoever out of that mix gets the publishing rights of said song, and why that matters, of which one of those is the most important thing to be, whether you wrote the song, whether you performed something, whether you sang it, or whether you own the publishing of it. Because I feel like nobody understands that there's like multi-facets of.
Absolutely. And a lot of times who ends up owning the publishing rights is the company, the record company.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be a good thing to talk about. It really would. Yeah. That would. By the way, speaking of that, I saw a video and there's this kind of older lady, gray-headed, and looked nothing like Avril Lavigne, right? And whoever was interviewing her asked, well, what would I know you from? And so she starts singing a couple of Avril Lavigne songs, and the comments are like, oh my God, Avril Lavigne's really let herself go, And then finally one person in the comments was like, she's the one that wrote the songs, you dumbasses.
Yeah, here we go. Howard Stern listed Billboard Magazine's top 5 greatest list. Guitar solo. Prince's Purple Rain was number 1. Bob Dale on the Get Up and Go show in 106.7 out of Ulysses. I listen to it every morning. He did that list this morning. To me, that's just such a loaded question. So,
I was going to say
top 5 guitar solos. I'm like,
I think everybody's going to have their own opinion, and I don't give a crap what Billboard's opinion on it is. That being said, Prince is a hell of a guitar player. I'm not.
It is a good guitar solo. Yeah, I don't know. Like, my thing is,
and I'll be real honest with you. See, and maybe it's the rhythm guitarist in me. I am honestly, I like a good riff much better than a good solo. I really could care less about the solos in most songs. I realize there are some really great solos, really iconic solos and all that. But to me, the riff that runs through the song is far more important than the solo,
Yeah. Because usually if you have a guitar player that can do solos and licks and stuff, Agreed. Like to me, a solo is like it's cool and everything, but like it's something where like I personally don't really I kind of check out there. But I'm more of a riff guy too. But what I do like is a good lead player who can complement like your riffs with just some leading
Absolutely.
tones, just some leading tones. And they're not stealing the show, but they're complementing your riff. That's the good. That's like when the vacuum hits a little bit of dust and it makes that sound. You're like, hell yeah, bro. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right. Have you seen that picture of that meme of Erica Kirk staring at the camera, pissed off?
No, I have not.
You gotta find. It's just her staring at the camera, and she's really mad. It's been going. I've been seeing it. People saying like, if somebody looks at you like this while you're playing guitar, you're shredding. It's just like this disgusted anger. It's like this is the highest compliment you can receive as a guitar player from one of your friends, and they look at you like this. Like,
well, there we go.
All right, good. So yeah, well, see everybody next week. Let me see. Not really a solo, but the opening of Ventura Highway is close to perfection to me.
Yeah.
Which one's that? Ventura Highway.
I don't know off the top of my head either. I would have to, quickly. I mean, I know I've heard of the song, but nothing's coming to mind. Yeah. I would have to. I would have to look it up to refresh my memory.
All right. Anything before we get out of here, big guy?
Oh, thanks for being with us. Thanks for participating in the discussion. We will be back next week at Wednesday. Yeah, probably 7:45 to 8 o'clock on Wednesday.
All right. Take it easy. Wait, it didn't end. 1 second. I hit the wrong.
It's the end of the show, and it's time we all went home. It's the end of the show, and we all want to go home. Yeah, it's the end of the show, so why don't you go home? And it's the end of the show, so all of us went home.